Oh my God, no Sammy's.
Okay, everybody.
Welcome back to episode 4 of Jordan Ain't No Joke. Entering the 1997-98 NBA season, Chicago Bulls had won 5 championships in the previous 7 years in EM Mouth. But as they sought their second three-peat, the future of the dynasty was in doubt. Preparations began for the 1997-98 season. Jordan and the Bulls granted unprecedented access to a film crew for the entire year. Jordan was preparing to conclude his time with the Bulls because we never acknowledged his time with the Wizards. 3 friends in Toronto were about to graduate from university. This is their ruckus, as seen through the ESPN Netflix docu-series The Last Dance. All right, so this episode, we are tackling episodes 7 and 8. So this was the episodes where Jordan went to play baseball, technically becoming a 2-sport athlete. And so in honor of that, we decided to have, we'll go around and introduce ourselves and say whether we are Team Deion Sanders, or Team Bo, as in Team Bo Jackson. Those were the 2 prime 2-sport athletes back in the day, and they both earned 30 for 30s. My name is Sammy Younan, and I'll let you guys go first.
And I'm JT. I would have to say I'm definitely Team Bo Jackson. There's a great 30 for 30, I think, on Bo Jackson as well. And I distinctly remember what a big deal he was back in the day, because Nike, he was another one of Nike's big, athletes that they promoted. And I remember his Bo Knows commercials, and he was another guy who really kind of burst into the pop culture in an amazing way. I never got that same feeling with Deion Sanders. I don't know if I was maybe too young, or just not paying attention to Deion Sanders as much, but Bo Jackson felt like he really cut through like nobody else.
I'm DC, and I'm going to say Team Bo. Not that I really watched much football, or I watched a little bit of baseball back in the days, but just purely from a marketing standpoint, kind of like what Jig is saying. I got more exposure to Bo. I know I saw Deion Sanders play here and there, but not the same kind of campaign.
I distinctly remember Nike did a series of these amazing print ads where they had, just these wonderful portraits of all these great athletes. And I remember having the Bo Jackson one up on my wall. I think I tore it out of a magazine, probably a GQ magazine or something. And, they had this great sort of copy on it. And at the end of it, it says, Bo Knows, and then it just has a swoosh or something like that. So he was a big deal, definitely.
The Bo campaign, too, was great because, as we've seen in The Last Dance, there's that David Fall interview from a couple of episodes ago where he said they wanted to market Michael Jordan as a singular athlete, even though he was on a team sport. But what was interesting with the Nike stuff was they were able to bring all their signees together for the Bo Knows campaign. They had like Gretzky, they had Jordan, they had a whole bunch of them in the commercials. That was like their Avengers, basically. Like they had introduced all these different, all this stuff, and they were able to bring them all together for one big commercial. It was pretty cool. So we are going to now talk about, as I said, episodes 7 and 8, and we always kick it off by the episodes don't have a name. We're going to start giving some of these episodes names. We're going to pick up where the filmmakers left off. Who has a good name for episode 7 to kick us off?
So yeah, I couldn't help myself with this one, but my favorite, one of my favorite lines from this episode is when, the episode opens with Krause at the press conference, and one of the reporters asks him about all the backstabbing that was going on, and Krause takes quite he's quite offended by the question, and he basically cuts short the press conference and walks out. And just before they cut to the title sequence, you can hear one of the reporters call out the reporter who asked the question and essentially says, "Way to go, Craig."
That was one of my picks too.
You can tell he got beef with Craig too, man.
I feel like we need a 30 for 30 on Craig.
He's always doing that.
Yeah.
Well, it was an interesting bit. I mean, obviously it was funny, but it was also, it says a lot about what the press was like back then. I think it's a different beast now. I think there's a lot more chumminess now with between the press and the and the players and the coach staff and the owners. There's a little more of a tit for tat. People to kind of know what the game is. Back then, there's a feeling that reporters were a little more willing to go deep and ask tough questions when they were in front of the athletes. Now it seems like more of that's done online or in writing, but not so much in person. But it was just a great fun moment, and I couldn't help but make that my choice today for the alternate title.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, that the Craig was Craig Sager, who was a big personality, was and still is a big personality in basketball in terms of media personalities. I don't remember how close he was back in the days, but he was very chummy with players, at least in the 2000s. In the mid 90s, Sammy, or late 90s, was Craig Sager still? Yeah, well, there was one episode when they were doing the Rodman segment. Yeah. So Sager gives him the $20 for the fine.
Mm-hmm. We talked before about how with NBC, when the NBA games went to NBC, and how prominent that was with Round Ball Rock and all those kind of things. At the same time, TNT was kind of up and coming as well. And when they had Craig Sager, he really shined with like the loud jackets and the weird questions, the interviews with Popovich where Pop would be like old man Surly with him, that kind of stuff. So he really made his mark as like kind of one of the more distinct sideline reporters.
Yeah, and I mean, just to clarify what I was saying earlier is that it's not that I think reporters are chummier now. I think back then you certainly had more reporters that were closer to individual players, as you see with Ahmad Rashad and some of the others. It just feels now like everyone kind of is in on the game, and it's kind of like, okay, well, it's a more of a back and forth in terms of, okay, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. And the other reason I liked using the option of the reason I like the Craig line is that later in the episode, it really shows how his relationship with the press, Jordan's relationship with the press, fell apart as well. So that whole episode is an interesting episode when it comes to the media and MJ as well.
I think too now a lot of NBA players have production companies. Curry has one. Kevin Durant has one. Matt Barnes, who's retired, but he has All the Smoke podcast. I think a lot of players, and LeBron obviously does a lot of cheese, but I think a lot of players now recognize that media obviously is a lot more accessible because they have a lot more of these outlets, and it's a lot more cheaper than things to do. But at the same time, I think it allows them to control the narrative a little bit better. I think when they see things, especially like The Last Dance, how media was, and they know their interactions too with sports media, and it's a larger ecosystem now with podcasts and blogs and all kinds of stuff. I think they realize that's a better way to control the narrative, and I think that's partly why Jordan also agreed to do The Last Dance and why he's so candid in it. It's almost like he's like, I want this on the record. This is what I was feeling. This is where I'm at, and I'm like, he's kind of almost correcting the narrative, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's also that most players now probably go through some sort of media training. I don't know when that started necessarily with professional sports, but certainly I would think sometime after the 80s, maybe in the 90s. And I don't know that, Michael necessarily did any of that. So things were much more raw. But now, as you were saying, Sam, is that, everyone's pretty media savvy, and a lot of them are just they create their own media now, so they know the game on and off the court.
Find or are you missing any of the balance? Like we had a quick little like cameo appearance of Jordan's wife, for example. The kids have appeared once or twice. They were in the French episode in the first episode, but they were little ones. Like, this is completely a basketball story. I know, like, they did talk about his dad dying and his mom and stuff like that, but for the most part, that balance is kind of, you find it weird, or like it's the right balance, or how do you find that between the personal and the basketball?
You know, it's really I think, like, for me anyways, it goes back to, like, they have X amount of time. I think there's a lot of importance with family, because you're trying to get a sense of the man during the games and after the game. But I think also, with the bitter divorce, that could be reasons why Juanita Jordan is not featured too much. There was some talk by the kids that, or by somebody, that the kids are going to be a little more featured in the next two episodes. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to get it all in for sure. And the relationship with the wife, as Denny mentions, is with Juanito. That's a very complicated relationship, to say the least. So I don't. That would take a whole nother documentary probably. And it really is not that important to the main story here. But to your point, I personally would love to see more of that, and gain more insight from him as a family man, because I'm sure his schedule and his work ethic took a toll on the family, and be interesting to hear what they feel about it now. But I don't think you'll ever get much from his ex-wife. That's for sure.
She's got her own Last Dance beef. Denny, what was your title? Do you have another title for episode 7 other than Way to Go, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, there's there's so many titles that could go with this episode. I think one of them would be Love Hurts. And so there's a big theme about the tough love that Jordan gave all his teammates in this episode, featuring Scotty Burrell and
A moment of silence again for Scotty Burrell.
see, okay, this is a funny thing. So that's been the narrative, like, throughout all the kind of media outlets or the sports discussions, is that, oh, how Michael treated Scotty Burrell. But then when you watch the doc, Scott Burrell's like, yo, I gave it back to him. He was a cool guy when you're not talking off the court, and the guy was just trying to raise everybody's level. He actually never once said, "Oh shit," like it's funny, and this is a little racist, I guess, but it's like it was all the white dudes who were like, "Oh, he was an asshole. Oh, he punched me," or like, "I was scared of him." But Scott Burrell said, "No, that was just his way of trying to light a fire under us." Scottie Pippen said, "I needed him to be like that. He needed to be the tough guy." I mean, like, that, it obviously wasn't all the white dudes. Bill Wennington was like, "I know why Mike did it, and it worked."
Yeah.
Right? And even Purdue said, "Yeah, after a while, you understood what he was trying to do, and you do think that he was a great teammate." But he also called him an asshole, a jerk, and all that.
Well, in the next episode, when Jordan was coming back post baseball, there was that scene where B.J. Armstrong was like, they had breakfast together. And he's like, "Why don't you come down to practice one time? The team kind of misses you," or like, you know what I mean? He kind of said, like, "Come on by." Like, it's not like he was like this like super toxic like co-worker or something like that. He was just a little bit like difficult to deal with. That was it. But it seemed like because they were succeeding and doing well, and they were becoming better basketball players, I think in the end they recognized that this was worth it. It was tough. It's like the when you go in the Marines or whatever, you have that boot camp. It was just Jordan boot camp.
Yeah, and I don't understand, like, the narrative out there. Like, everybody is focused. They're talking about how he's a mean guy or he was a bully. Like, have things really turned to that degree where it's a completely foreign concept to them, that in these types of situations, and particularly in sports, that you're gonna get personalities like this. You're gonna get alpha dogs who are gonna bark because they want everybody to work at that same level of intensity.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the point before too, where like we forget that other players do this. Like I've seen Tom Brady chew out his like teammates on the bench when he was playing for the New England Patriots. He's not exactly saying like good job dropping the ball there, guy. You'll get the next one. You know what I mean? Like, he's tearing into the guy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know where this narrative comes from. It is a weird thing. And like you said, it's also just isolated. Like, it's just, they just particularly single out Jordan. Because when Kerr talks about it too, in the fight that they had, like, he was saying how competitive he was and how angry and irritated he was with Jordan. Like, he just didn't have the authority and the ability to properly back it up, as he was saying.
Yeah, I mean, he literally said that I wasn't as talented to back it up. So at the end of the day, I mean, I think, and I hesitate to get ahead of myself because the episode ends with, I think one of the most emotional moments in the whole series so far. But this wasn't coming from from Michael just being a jerk for being a jerk's sake. You know what I mean? Like he had a vision, he had a goal, and sometimes you got to drag people kicking and screaming to get the best out of them. It's very easy. I mean, the human mind is, essentially lazy. And if you want to do something great, you need to be, you know, sometimes cajoled and bullied, unfortunately, to do those great things. And Michael, people forget, like, and you got a sense of this at the end of the episode where he had been through quite a bit. I mean, think about someone as talented and as he was when he first came on the scene, and then getting injured so badly, and then having to rebuild himself, come back, and then essentially help build this franchise. Um, that took a lot out of the man. And this episode, there's a theme of Michael just being tired by it all. I mean, you want your teammates to want the same thing if you're putting that much into the game. And the thing with, like, with Burrell is that he seemed like, I mean, Michael, he said that he was just such a nice guy. That was part of it. But he was also malleable, and that's what Michael needed. And so I think someone like Burrell thrived in that situation. Others, at the end of the day, all thrived. Maybe they didn't enjoy it as much, or maybe they don't remember it as nicely. But this is a theme throughout this whole series where we've talked about what it takes to do great things. I mean, and histories in all fields is riddled with these kind of characters like Michael Jordan, who are just often perceived as tyrants, but they're tyrants in the service of a vision of something that's never been done before. We're talking about your Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or even people like that who have reputations for being tough, but they're tough on very talented people who need that extra push to push through. And that's what this episode ultimately was about for me.
You wish we saw more of Phil Jackson as a coach too? I find that's a little bit,
Oh yeah. I
that's a
feel
little
like that's
thin, isn't it?
So that's an interesting point because I feel like we haven't had enough of Phil Jackson aside from that, I guess, that Rodman episode. Part of that may be that the director talked about how he had very little time with Phil Jackson. Like he had one day. They were supposed to be. He was going to give them only like a couple hours. They ended up getting, like, I think 6 or 7 hours out of him, but it was just that one chance, and that's all he got. So maybe he just didn't have enough. Maybe he's saving it for another episode. But I do wish we saw more of Phil for sure.
Phil needs his own 10 episodes, really.
Oh yeah. Oh, easy. Yeah. I mean, what a story.
Well, 11, I guess, if you want to do one for every ring, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's, going back to the Jordan thing and the tyrant stuff. I mean, I think that's like, it's so easy to say that, but all those dudes from that generation, and even the generation after him, that's part of the game. Trash talking is part of the game, and that's just all extended trash talking, right? Now, people trash talk for different reasons. At least he was doing it for leadership reasons. He was trying to get light fires under people's asses, not just to say, "Oh, well, I'm better than you," because everybody knows he's better than everybody there. He's trying to get everybody motivated, and I guess that's that becomes a question of, well, is it the best way to motivate people?
Well, I mean, to play devil's advocate here, like even Phil Jackson says at a certain point he had to rein Michael in. So there may be something, we never hear, you know, the worst of it. There are players who intimate that, he crossed the line a few times, and we never really see or hear what that crossing of the line was. So it's possible that he did go too far, and luckily Phil Jackson was there to rein him in when needed. But there, yeah, I don't know. There may be something to what those guys are saying. But at the end of the day, with hindsight being 2020, you look back, and I don't see any of them regretting their time there.
You
None
got
of them
rings.
seem to. They got rings, and none of them seem to have any traumatic, you know, PTSD from it. They seem to be doing just fine.
Except, except maybe Craig Elo, though.
And maybe Tony Kukoc.
Rest in peace, Craig Elo.
Oh.
But it's hard to pull this out of context too, because you're talking about 82 games. They're on buses all the time. They're on planes all the time. They're in different time zones. To have spent all that time with somebody, especially go from like October to June because they were winning championships. Yeah, there's going to be times when people are hangry or whatever it may be, or irritated or frustrated, or they had a bad game the day before, like they didn't get enough sleep. There's all these different things like over the course of the season. So you could easily pull out a moment or two and say, see, he was a jerk. He was mean to me. He's whatever. But I think it's just because over the course of a time, like you have to allow so much time and acknowledge so much time. I don't know that you can isolate 1 or 2 minute like moments and say he was mean to me and this is who he is exactly.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of these things they have a compound effect, right? Like they multiply and they add. One adds to the other, and it just gets bigger and bigger, and pressure builds up. And under those stressful situations, I'm sure guys, uh, you know, didn't always take it, in the most good-natured way. But I mean, there's no doubt he was a tough leader, and that's what they need. I mean, Michael says, it's like if you can't take me yelling at you, what are you going to do in the playoffs? Like,
That's a
I'm
legitimate
your
point.
teammate. Yeah, I'm your teammate. I'm here to help you, help us win this thing. And if you're going to cry when I'm talking to you, what are you going to do when you're out there and you've got like the Patrick Ewing and we're facing the Knicks or the
Charles Oakley.
or Charles Oakley or what are you guys going to do there? So like
No, that's such a good point because actually, in that moment, the the first thing I thought of was Glenn Ross. When Alec Baldwin is given that speech to all the guys, and he's like, "If you can't take this, how are you gonna take it on a sit or whatever the line was?"
brass
And that
balls.
reminded me exactly of that mentality.
Yeah, it's so true. There's so much about this documentary that feels like a movie. Like a lot, some of these lines that they're saying, they feel like, wow, this is right out of a movie, which is apt, and certainly in that case where he's like, if you can't handle this, how are you going to handle the playoffs?
Yeah, a lot of the drama, like modern NBA now, a lot of players are like fighting for like minutes, or they don't want to sit on the bench or whatever. They want to start. It's these little dramas.
Well, yeah, well, it all comes down to the work, right? I mean, there's a great line that Jordan says in the huddle just before they're going out. I think to play the Nets, starts off with hard work, ends with champagne.
Yeah, it's a great
So
line.
the
Mhm.
champagne, if you guys are thinking about the champagne without the hard work, then you don't belong here. And it's such a great line. Great way to motivate your teammates.
So with everything that we've seen and everything we've talked about with Jordan, here's a question then. Would you want to be Jordan's teammate and go through all that battles and all that hard work and it ends in champagne? 6 times it ends it in champagne. Or you want to face Jordan? You want to be like on the Knicks or some other team and then know that Jordan's going to mash you on your nose. You're going to get mashed on your nose either way. So
Oh, I mean, this is that classic, like, how much how much money would it take for you to go in the ring with Tyson for 1 second or 10 seconds or whatever? Uh, you know, eh, this is a team sport, so 100% I'd be on the Bulls and learning everything I can from him. If I was a ball player, I don't know that I want to be on the other side of it. He's just too great. I don't think there's much cachet in saying, yeah, I got obliterated by Jordan. Well, most people do. But if you got to say that I played with Jordan, then that's a different story.
I mean, it's a bit of a dead end situation, right? Because if you know you're gonna get licked every single
Yes.
time, I think most people would probably want to be on the Bulls. If you ask me, well, if I was on a team and we really believed we could, at least challenge them,
Mhm.
then yeah, it'd be tempting to say, if I can kind of like, I don't know, give them like just a regular night, not a super night, then
No, man,
then
it's a no-win situation, because then you become BJ Armstrong. Has
well,
you
I could be
you
Joe
you,
Dumars, right?
you when you get that one good game, you get a little confidence in you, and then Michael comes back and destroys you.
Right.
Or-
Well, but he's destroying everybody
Yeah.
anyways. I guess. I
No,
don't know.
but then you get angry, Michael, because he gets angry. Like that game against the Nets, like they didn't lose the game; they just had a bad game. But he came back so mad, and he just obliterated them. And then the whole thing with
Well, the Magic too. They destroyed them for a whole season. They destroyed the entire NBA for a whole season, won 72 games, like because Nick Anderson stole the ball.
and that thing with LeBradford Smith. I mean, even if you don't even have to say anything, Jordan, if he just feels like you slighted him, he'll make up shit in his head just to take it out on you the next
Yeah,
game.
the George Carl restaurant thing, where like,
Yeah, and well, yeah, and we can get into all of that stuff more in like when we talk about episode 8.
mhm.
But it's kind of a stark contrast when you think of you know what once Jordan left, and then Pippen became the man on the team, and it was different because everybody's saying, well, they didn't have to deal with people yelling at them anymore, and Pip was the guy who will help you up, pat your back, saying it's okay. But then you also get Pip, who doesn't go into the game because he feel like he needed to take the last shot in that '94 playoff game versus the Knicks.
Mhm.
So that right there was like another title for this episode for me, was like, which was a really good line, when they said Phil Jackson said, "Fuck him, Pete Myers, come on in."
That needs to be a
Yeah,
T-shirt.
100%. And I think that's a perfect encapsulation of the ultimate difference, or the ultimate thing that sets Jordan apart from everyone else, is that leadership, right? Like there's no way that, not that would have Jordan would have been in that situation, but the fact that he completely crumbled in terms of leadership in that moment was pure, it was BS, and you could see the ramifications of it. And it's weird because Pippen now says that he regrets it, but he wouldn't change anything about it. So it's kind of a weird headspace that he's in. But even Michael, you know, back in the day when was it their first championship, when he could have kept the ball, but he passed it to, who was it, Paxson? What year was that?
91.
Yeah, that was '91.
Yeah, the 91. It's like, and Phil Jackson tells him you did it the right way. I mean, that's real leadership. That's a warrior who knows what it takes to win, and if it means passing the ball, you pass the ball. And Pip was a bit of a prima donna in that moment, and that's just really unfortunate. And MJ says, like, Pip's never going to live that down, and it's true. Yeah, and so ultimately, what sets Jordan apart from, arguably the number two player in the league, was that moment where Pippen decides that he'd rather sit on the bench if he's not going to get the ball. And to Phil Jackson's credit, he said, "Well, fuck him. It's not this game is not about one man. It's about the team." And Pippen really lost a lot of points, professionally in that moment. Okay, well, maybe we can switch gears here, and so obviously the big story in this episode is the death of James Jordan, and that tragedy, that really bizarre and strange twist to this.
Very strange timing.
Very strange timing. And so the documentary, does go into a little bit about how the media kind of does Jordan dirty in this whole situation when his father passed away, and tries to make connections between his gambling and the murder of his father. Ultimately, it seems like the documentary is pretty strongly on the side of it being all BS. I think it probably is, because we've talked about this in the past in the episode about his gambling, and how I think we all seem to agree that it wasn't necessarily true that he was a gambling addict or had a problem. It was a competition problem with him. So the idea that was all connected seems thin, to say the least. What do you guys think?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess honestly I don't have too much to say about it, because I think it's just stupidity. I think it's just, I don't know, it's dumb. That's all.
Yeah, well, that's why my title for this episode was Jordan's Tears. For the two reasons. One is that scene at the end where he's crying because he's talking about competition and the price of leadership and winning, but also because this dealt with his dad's passing. It's interesting because the first time that Jordan retired was in 93, 94, or whatever it was. When that happened, because his dad had died and because he went to baseball, I honestly believe that was the end. This wasn't just like, I don't know, like a football player taking a couple of years off or somebody like that. Like, this really felt like the end. I know Jordan was dealing with his own grief, but at the same time, we were also dealing with our own grief too, because my man was gone. Like, it just seemed like an abrupt ending. And I understood it because he needed the time and the space because of the dad thing. But at the same time, it's like, well, what about us?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, and I mean, the footage that they had of people all over the world watching TV when he's making that announcement. I mean, it's kind of amazing to think that that retirement was a where were you when it happened type moment. I don't know that necessarily happens anymore. I mean, people, like, if LeBron retires, I don't know that it'll be the same thing.
Some
As
fireworks, probably.
there'll be, but I don't know that it'll be that sort of like everyone stopped in the streets, that kind of thing. I mean, this was a monumental thing, and I just remember thinking like, wow, that's it. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. And of course, at that point, no one's ever thinking that he would come back. I mean, I don't even think at that age that I thought that it was even possible, even though he kind of leaves the door open in the press conference. But I just was like, that's it. Like, well, is this even possible for him to come back? Even though that's what we all want.
What I thought was so interesting, I remember back in those days watching that press conference, I was surprised at how stoic he was, and how kind of, I don't know, how lighthearted, for lack of a better word, he was, despite what had just happened really recently. And it's not that made me suspicious of anything, but just like, wow, he's really keeping it to himself. He's really putting on like layers of of, of privacy, of the mask that he does not want to share with his feelings on his father, what had happened with his father. And even in the words that he used, he'll never, he makes an extremely conscious effort of not being a victim. But I think it's okay to, for something like that horrendous to happen in your family, to kind of feel like, to be honest about it. And he never had, and even within this documentary, like, it's still, he talks about it, but the whole thing about it, like he says, turning a positive out of a negative, it's a little, he's really keeping it, like Ahmad said, he keeps it to the vest, really very close to the vest.
It could be one of those things that it's also that it just cuts so deep that he has to put up those walls. I mean, we do see a much more emotional Jordan later in life. Obviously, the memes, the crying memes, and what have you.
Mm.
Back in the when he, I think it was a Hall of Fame induction. I wonder though if he always had it in the back of his mind that he was going to come back, despite what he was saying publicly. I think maybe he really just needed this sort of sabbatical, and that it was always his intention to come back. So that might be part of it as well. And as he aged and got older, he was much more emotional. But there's some things, man, like something like that. It could just be one of those things that you put up such deep and thick walls around that part of your life, because it's just too much to deal with, especially in a public way.
The second episode, the one where they had that scene, that classic scene after he defeated the Sonics, and he was in the locker room.
Oh,
He had the ball, right? We've seen that because they aired that, but they didn't air the sobs back then. At least I don't remember the sobs.
the sobs.
You
Oh
mean
my God.
the audio?
Yeah,
Yes.
they didn't air that,
yeah.
did they, Denny? I don't remember the sobs like that. That
I
was
don't
like,
know.
But they might not have picked up on the audio. Like those were the broadcast video cameras that we watched as teenagers.
Yeah, they might have cut those out. Yeah, they might have had commentary over it or whatever.
Yeah,
I remember that scene, and then when you hear it, you're like, "Yo, man!" Like it wrecks you a little bit too, right? You're like,
oh yeah,
you have a little tear come down your eye, right? Because it's like,
oh, for sure. I mean, it's never, it's always uncomfortable hearing a grown man cry, but to hear
those were sobs, man. Those weren't crying.
Yeah, those were like deep guttural sobs that were just from a deep place of sadness and joy, I think, at the same time. So that was emotional to watch.
I don't know about the joy at that moment, but I think those are 2 years of pent up emotions too. Like just maybe not facing, well, not facing, but just letting it all go.
Yeah, I mean, James Jordan's impact on his son is nothing small. I mean, he, as he says in the episode, he was his rock, he was his best friend, his confidant, his man. He was always with him. I mean, it was one of those relationships that I think only fathers and sons can really understand. And when you're dealing with a life as large and on a large scale like that, the decisions that they would have had to make together and the problems and situations that would have arose, it's hard not to become emotional about it. And then for it to end that way is just so tragic.
It's fascinating because it's like his parents clearly didn't care that he was Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? The basketball player. It's pretty clear that they were like, "Boy, get your butt in the car," like that kind of tone, right? So, and Jordan allowed it from them because of who they were, but there wasn't very many people that could tell Jordan or talk to Jordan in that way and in that tone. And I think he also found that valuable. And I think as the series will go along too, the demands on Jordan and people just wanting things, and we saw already the tickets and like how much people wanted tickets from him and all those kind of things. All those things, like his parents probably just were like, "Look, we know who you are and we understand you," and so he could be himself, like all the emotions and all the other stuff. Just be himself, and that's probably a relief too.
Well, they ground him, right? Like, I mean, when you're someone like Michael Jordan or a celebrity of any stature, if you don't have people that can ground you, you just become unmoored, right? Like you just, it's impossible to have any semblance of a normal life when every day at work, 20,000 people are, cheering and telling you how much they love you. So you need people like that, and luckily for MJ, those people were his parents. Not everyone has that. Certainly not everyone coming from his background either, right? So it seems like a wonderful relationship that ended too soon. And so okay, I have to ask you guys though. So once this retirement happens, the media goes nuts and makes these connections. And then there's this rumor that it was really a 18-month suspension. What do you guys think? Do you think there was any truth to that?
Once again, just bullshit.
Yeah, it seemed like the documentary was trying to sort of put to rest a lot of these big stories about Michael Jordan, whether it's the gambling or the suspension, and it's just weird. It was a weird obsession, I have to say. Like it just seems like such a weird obsession.
There's an interesting story when Michael Jordan was in his second year. I think it was in his second year of the Chicago Bulls. Him and his ex-wife Juanita. Well, at the time they weren't even married, so they had a child out of wedlock. Nowadays, it's like nobody cares or whatever. But Jordan like had the kid with him, and he ran into the reporter somewhere. I can't remember which reporter it was, but he ran into the reporter, and so the reporter was in this weird position where he didn't know if he should report that Jordan had a kid or not. It's a weird dilemma of like having a kid out of wedlock doesn't care. Like, are they gonna like defeat the Knicks next week or like you know what I mean? Like, there's bigger issues at stake. It didn't seem like a big thing, but there's a weird moral authority that a lot of the media had, and I think that's where some of the gambling stuff comes from. They can pass this judgment, and so once the gambling stuff started coming out, they were passing this judgment, and eventually when Jordan did like that was one of Jordan's first scandals, having a kid out of wedlock. And so people were like, you know, your role model, you should be married, you should be like, it's all these old fashioned values. But it's a weird moral response to a player that's like, I'm just playing basketball, dude. Like, you know what I mean?
But the thing with Jordan also is that they had nothing else to go on in terms of the game, right? Like there was just nothing they could really hang on him there, and he did do a pretty good job of creating a sort of all-American squeaky clean image, with his endorsements or what have you. So this was something that they could sort of latch on to, and it obviously makes a good story. But it was just, I mean, the whole through line of the gambling thing kind of comes to a climax for me in this episode, because ultimately it was on, not very firm ground, these rumors, and ultimately comes down to them doing him dirty with the way they made those connections to his father's death. And I have a feeling that we're probably not going to hear much about the gambling anymore. I think that's pretty much done.
Yeah,
Early clickbait.
yeah, that's a good analogy actually. Yeah, it's just a way to just drum up readership, selling newspapers, and I think in the '90s too, you're kind of getting more into that CNN style of journalism where people just need a 24-hour news cycle, and you got to come up with shit to write, and you need to sell papers.
And Jordan was a big enough name that like anything that you wrote about him, people are going to find it and read it. So that's like we've seen this kind of little cottage industry of President Trump right now, where people are writing all kinds of books and making documentaries and stuff like this. And he's a terrible president. We agree. He's awful for the country. We agree. But everybody's making a lot of money and a lot of exposure and making a lot of careers off of him. So as bad as he is, he's also really good. And Jordan was the same way because he was the golden goose. So if you could just write about him, if you could write the dude who wrote Sam Smith, who wrote the Jordan Rules, there was a lot of different ways that people could make money off of Jordan or somehow connect yourself to Jordan and get yourself to a higher level.
And even Sam Smith wasn't willing to go there with the whole gambling connection to the death of his father. So there's clearly like enough time has passed for the truth usually stands with the passing of time, and it seems like a lot of those bullshit stories have kind of fallen by the wayside. The other thing I want to talk about in this episode is this whole idea of Michael, switching over to baseball. And I mean, it's just incredible to think that he not only did he make the switch in the game, but he also changes his whole body to play the game. And that just that takes a certain level of warrior mentality to sort of, be humble enough, or to be willing to be humbled and just start from the bottom. That part of the story is, I found it just incredible, that he retrained his body to build himself up to be an outfielder. His trainer gets pretty emotional in the episode, actually, when he talks about it.
Grover.
Tim Grover, he gets pretty emotional. He's like, he's going to do whatever it takes, and he was willing to just, rebuild himself. And then he has to rebuild himself back to come back to basketball, which is, again, it's really hard to do. And this just goes back to, the trash talking and what it takes to be a leader. It's easy to sort of gloss over those facts. It was, oh yeah, he became a baseball player and he had to train differently and whatever. It's like, no, he had to break himself down and rebuild himself twice over that 18-month period. those kind of things take a certain kind of metal and a certain kind of person, and so when he's on that court, I mean, he's coming with that baggage with him. Whereas a lot of these guys, and we've talked about this before, are maybe not as tough and a little softer.
Tim Grover thing, like Jordan doesn't get enough credit. He was one of the first NBA players to go out and get a proper trainer and to set that whole thing up. And I know by now, by the time we get to LeBron James, but he's eating like the chicken breast with no skin on it and like doing the proper nutrition and the health and all that kind of stuff. But Jordan was one of the first ones to kind of set that up. And like, I'm like, it's a different type of dedication that we
For
had
sure.
never seen before.
Tim Grover and Jordan together were I think one of the first to really start taking weight training seriously as part of the training and packing on muscle. I mean, if you look at players' bodies up until then, they're, tend to be tall and lanky, right? Like, but you look at Jordan, I mean, he got kind of ripped. I mean, he was lean, but he was ripped.
And Denny liked that story from the last episode where like they were talking about like they would get the cigarettes from the coach back in the day. Like they were drinking beer during halftime and those kind of stories. Like those were classic NBA stories. People were doing coke and drinking beer and smoking. Players would be outside sometimes smoking if it wasn't like a winter game. Like those kind of things. So it's again just another. Jordan's never going to get the proper credit for this. Larry Bird and Magic brought the NBA to a certain point of prominence, and there's no box score for that, and there's no way to give him proper recognition for that. And then Jordan took it to another level. He built it on top of that. Like they were the foundation, and he built it even higher. And again with the trainer and all that kind of work, and he's not going to fully ever get the credit for that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that just doesn't get talked about enough. But and then it just this episode kind of climaxes with that emotional wallop of a moment where you have Purdue talking about what an asshole he was, and then Michael talking about what it takes to be a leader and to win, and he gets really emotional. Like it's the first time we've seen him just straight up about to cry, and he asks for the camera to cut, and it's just to me that everything comes to that down to that moment for who that man ultimately is. And he says, it's like I never asked him to do anything I didn't do myself, and that's what it comes down to when you're talking about leadership on the court is you're not being asked to do any more than the best guy. And
when you go back and look at that scene, the tequila is still full. Like that was an
yeah.
early.
So here's an interesting story. So the director talks about that moment in an interview, and he says that moment was 40 minutes into the first interview they did with him. 40 minutes into the first interview, Michael gets that emotional. And the other thing that was in the first 40 minutes that he ever interviewed Michael was the cocaine circus story. So he was like, after that first hour of interviewing him, he was like, I had him laughing his ass off and then crying. And so he was like, oh my God, like, I think I have something here. And so it's incredible to think that like that happened so early in the process. And he obviously doesn't use it until this episode 7, but you can tell that Michael seemed to want to get a lot off his chest. And in some ways, this is kind of a confessional for him.
So yeah, let's try to really take a deep dive into that moment where he starts to get misty, when he starts to get emotional. What do you think those tears meant for Michael Jordan? Okay, well, I'll give you an idea of kind of what my train of thought was when I saw those tears, because I think it's basically, it was when he was talking about that perception of being an asshole, and the last things he said before he started tearing up was, if you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. And so I was trying to think, I mean, what exactly was he feeling? What hurt him? Or was he feeling hurt? Did he feel like maybe like all that hard work that he put into it and all the accolades, all the championships, maybe there's a part of him that still feels misunderstood or maybe underappreciated or just in a way devalued because people think he was, I don't know, being selfish. I mean, any thoughts about what those tears might have meant?
I mean, I think along those lines, I think it to me it came across as, that notion of the misunderstood artist. And, people see the
Mm,
masterpiece. They don't see the 1,000 paintings or pages of a book that got thrown out. And you got a sense of that in the way they cut that moment, because they were flashing back to like all the tough moments he had over the years. And Michael's talking about, this is what it takes. And you're seeing these moments of when he was injured, and when the fans hated him, and all this stuff that it just builds up. And I truly feel like, if you're someone who's that obsessed with something, there is a part of you that feels that there is no one else on this earth that will understand your obsession and will understand what you go through. People can analyze it and make best guesses and judgments on it, but you will never understand what it feels like to be in that body and be that man in his head. And that's why I have often felt that Michael transcended the sport in a certain way to make it a really an artistic thing, where it's just like he's this artistic genius on the court that it took a million it took a million brushstrokes to get that perfect you know jump shot or what have you. Like I really think it was one of those things where he just felt no one will ever understand him. And maybe his dad was that person who did understand him, and maybe he was doing it for his dad. um, and he unfortunately never got to see the whole picture finished. But I took it that to feel like he just felt alone.
I felt it was love. I think he was crying out of love because you guys have kids. I don't have kids, at least according to the courts. But I don't have kids. But you guys have kids, and so there are times when like kid wants to have like ice cream or gummy bears or something, whatever it is for dinner, and you have to say to them, no, you have to have like vegetables or whatever healthy people eat. And there's these times when you have to make these choices, and the kid doesn't get it. Like you're being mean, you're being unfair, you're being rude, you're being whatever it is, and they get upset and they're crying. But ultimately, what it is that you want the best for the kid, and you're trying to do the best for the kid, and you're trying so hard. But the kid doesn't get it just because they're 3. And I think that's what Jordan was crying over. It was like he wanted so much for the Bulls, for the organization, for the city, for the fans, for everybody. He was trying to do so much. But people didn't want to put the time in, or they didn't want to work, or they wanted to coast. They couldn't get up to the level that he wanted them to get up to. And so he was trying to love them the way that they are, but he was asking them to do something that they may not be able to do. And I think that was the way he was demonstrating his love. It wasn't a normal way that where you bring like chocolates and flowers and stuff like that, the traditional type of love. It was the way that Jordan loved.
So you think those tears were a signal of his love for the game, or for just or the
The player
career that
and
he
the
had? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
and the purity of the game, but also for the players.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean,
I think he genuinely loved the Bulls.
I think so, but I think I lean towards the maybe closer to what Jigar's talking about, because I felt like that tier was for himself, really more than something that was being kind of expressed out for everybody. But because yeah, I don't know, I felt like for me it felt just like this is all the stuff I do, and I still need to justify it. Like I did this all to win, and I did for everybody, and then people still questioning my moves. And I felt like it was like one of those maybe it's a bit of it's lonely at the top kind of a tier. And then that goes back for me to what Jigger was saying, like, and that's what he needed his father for. And that's kind of why he retired in the first place. And like that for me represented why he retired the first time, because all you fuckers don't understand. I do all this shit just for the love of it, right? I don't need your fucking money, right? Because he was smart enough. He had a good agent, but he wasn't the highest paid guy there
No,
in
I
the
mean,
league.
I mean,
He still
right.
did everything that he did, and he did it as
Even the Bulls owner says that when Michael was playing baseball, he was still paying him his NBA salary because he was underpaid, just in terms of his salary. So it wasn't about the money,
yeah.
but also to along the lines of what we were saying earlier is that I think genuinely he wanted this for everybody, but I think the tears were about not everybody was not willing to do what he was willing to do, and so ultimately he says, if you don't want to play that way, don't play that way, and what that means is he's alone because he is playing that way, and I think there's a sadness to that.
Mhm.
Just compounded by the doubts. It's incredibly weird that after everything, he's still doubted. I don't know how much more you can do. We're going to see in
Yeah.
the last two episodes, the Utah Jazz series. And the Bulls were not the favorites for that one. The Jazz were expected to win that series. The Bulls were the underdogs in that series. How? Like the Vegas odds, the sports media, like remember was it the second episode? I think it was the second one where Jordan in the Cleveland series, and he was going up to each of the writers. We took care of you. We took care of you. We're going to take care of you tonight. And it's the same thing. We're like, again, the media was just like, yeah, the Jazz are going to take this. They're a much better team. I'm like, 5 championships in, and I'm like, how much more can he do?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to dig into that season's box scores and stats and team record and stuff like that. I think Utah had the best record that year. So, and and I think the Bulls were like, this documentary is telling you all the shit that they were going through this last season. And so a lot of people started seeing signals of, okay, these guys are ready to retire, right? The whole management themselves were like believing in the team. Everybody's gone. Phil's gone for this year. So there's lots of reasons for people to cast doubts for that final season.
Is there anything else you want to add to that moment? By the way, everybody, when that montage happened at the end of 7, the music too, we talked a lot about the soundtrack. I don't know. That was obviously the original music that they put for this episode. But whatever it was, it like lit up internet tune feed, all the sites and stuff and places where people go to find music in a TV show or commercial, whatever. So whoever the broadcaster or whoever wrote that song needs to release it immediately because they will do quite well.
This is the music that was playing under him talking about what it takes to win.
Interesting. It's probably a track.
It's probably what?
It's probably a stock track.
Stock track. Okay, so why don't we transition to episode 8?
So of course, episode 7 ends with that great montage, and Jordan in tears, and the winning has a price. Now we're going to switch to episode 8, where he leaves and ends up coming back to the NBA in dramatic fashion. So what were your titles for episode 8?
All right, so my title for episode 8 is Black Capone. And the reason is for that amazing scene where after they didn't lose to the Nets, they just had a really bad game to the Nets after Michael publicly talked about how impossible it would be to lose to the Nets. They'd have to be asleep to lose to the Nets. And then the Nets take them for I think it was a pretty close game. It was like a 2-point game or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a low-scoring game, and Michael was just livid. And there's this great scene in the change room where he's.
Well, they actually did lose that game.
Did they lose that game? They
That
lost
was game 2 against the Hornets, and that's when BJ
it was the
won the game for them.
Sorry, I was thinking of the other. Yeah, I was thinking. It was against the Hornets. That's right. And MJ's there in the locker room with that baseball bat, smoking a cigar, and that was just
Yes.
that was Robert De Niro as Al Capone in Untouchables level shit. Like,
Yep.
and it's Chicago, and it's just like all of it. It was just perfect. And I have to say, it's amazing that he smoked.
Cigar.
Yeah, that he smoked so many cigars and still played like that. But it was just an incredible moment of wow, this guy is a true gangster, like in the best sense of the word.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and payback some other.
So sorry, Jake. I mean, I had the exact same thought process as you. That section really stuck out to me, except I titled it "The Untouchables."
Nice, yes, yeah. It's one of those things where like the puns just write themselves, but it was just you just would never see that today.
Yeah.
And he was a real
Mhm.
man. He was a tough guy, man.
That scene when he was swinging in the bat in the change room was like just some of the most amazing shit. Because the producer or the director of that particular footage asks him pissed off. He goes, "I'm not pissed off. We just fought once. There'll be a dogfight tomorrow." And then he said, "Let's see if all that talking. Let's see you do all that trash talking in the beginning of the game. That's 0-0. It's easy to talk shit when you're up. That's a sign of a good man. If you can talk shit when it's even, or talk shit when you're behind. When you're ahead, it's easy to talk." That's
Yeah.
just like that's no Steve Zalian couldn't write shit like that.
Oh, exactly. And it's one of those things. It goes back to earlier episodes. Well, when they're talking about the riff with Isaiah and what have you. Ultimately, Michael, no matter how tough he was and the trash talking, he was all about the sport and sportsmanship. And so, it's like if you're up and you're trash talking, then you're just an asshole, right? But if you're close and you're trash talking, okay, now it's a competition, right? Or if you're losing and you're like, I'm coming for you, then that's some gangster shit. And he just comes back and he blows him out. Like it was it was amazing. That really cracked me up is the interview with BJ, because you could just see it on his face. He was just like, I mean, I had a good game. And he just knows that he's got the shit-eating grin on his face. And he's like, what was I supposed to do? Like, it's like, yeah, well, there were consequences, son.
We need to also acknowledge those that Hornets team, because that team was crazy. It was BJ Armstrong, Muggsy Bogues, Del Curry, Vlade Divac, Anthony Mason, Vernon Maxwell was on that team, J.R. Reed, and Glenn Rice.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't know Mad
that
Max
was a
was on that
crazy
team.
team. They were. That's why I guess they were considered a threat, because they had a good couple of pieces there.
But it's kind of funny because as stacked as that team looks on paper, at the beginning of that section of the documentary, BJ Armstrong kind of says, "Look, we're not that good of a team. We know the Bulls are much more superior." But yeah, on paper, that sounds like a really fucking good team.
51-31 that year, which the Hornets haven't been 51 for like years since Jordan took over.
Yep.
Well, the other thing in this episode, I mean, the thing that made me laugh was when Jordan's talking about playing the Supersonics, and they're showing him the video of was it Gary Payton talking about, oh yeah, people were just afraid of Mike. I just pushed back and stuff, and Mike's like, that's not what happened. Because it was Father's Day. I was thinking about my dad. I had a lot on my mind. I had nothing to do. He goes, I can handle the glove.
They were up 3-0, and this is what I was saying before when we were talking about the battles between the Pistons and the Knicks. It always felt like the Bulls were kind of anticlimactic in the finals. Like it was always the battles in the Eastern Conference Finals. Those were the epic things, and where the mythology kind of fits in. But
Yeah,
the
it's a good
playoffs are
point.
always like they just kind of like go through the finals pretty like they almost like walk through it. I mean, Bob Costas had that line right at the beginning of that series with the Sonics where he said, "This is more of a coronation than anything else. We just got to go through it now."
Okay, well, so we're at the end of episode 8. There are 2 episodes left in the series. Man, I think the next Sunday is going to be a rough one. I'm going to miss looking forward to this every week. And you guys have any thoughts on what you expect to see in the final 2 episodes?
I mean, there's stuff with his kids. That's what the rumor is. So it'd be good to get a little insight on what it was like growing up to be their kid, the kids of Michael Jordan.
For sure, the family stuff
The kids unfortunately tried to play basketball.
Oh, was it Marcus? No, Marcus has the trophy room, the sneaker store, right? Or Jeffrey, maybe.
They both played.
They should have changed that last name. It's like Tom Hanks' son when he does his acting thing or whatever. Like, all right, whatever, dude.
Well, but I think if they do give some play to the children and to the sons, especially, it would be a nice way to sort of bookend and connect, his relationship to his father, and how, what he may have learned or taken away from his relationship with his father and how that was passed on to his children. So I do think it would be a nice moment to have, just in terms of making those connections between the fatherhood connections, essentially, because his father was such a huge deal in his life, and to see how he was able to or not pass that on to his kids.
I'm looking forward to the flu game and having Jordan talk about that because that game is just so
Yes.
epic.
Oh my God,
in
yes.
The mythology of Jordan,
Oh,
and the fact that it's right at the end.
oh, for sure. Yeah, that flu game, that's got to be.
On the reverse of that, though, it's gonna be potentially one more Scottie Pippen kind of in the bad light moment. I mean, it's nothing that it was directly his fault, but I think in the last game of the 90s, Scottie had back spasms, and he was quite ineffective. So kind of just another kind of Scott in a good light story.
Then there's all these moments, the back spasms, the migraine headache game with the Pistons, the I'm not going to go in with Tony Kukoc game, all these pivotal leadership faulty moments with Pippen. Do they affect your relationship with Pippen? Do you see him in a lesser light, or you still consider him like he is one of the 50 greatest players?
No, I honestly doesn't change my attitude. Doesn't change my attitude towards Pippen.
So I mean, I'll just say this: that the episode ends with the sobbing on the floor. There's also a moment with him and his sons near the end of the episodes, near the end of it, episode 8. And so it'll be interesting to see, because with 2 episodes left, there's still potentially a lot that needs to get done here, just in terms of the storytelling. Obviously, the climax of the championship, but also, like, we've come along a long way with a lot of different characters, and it'll be interesting to see how they wrap up Phil Jackson and Rodman and Pippen and some of the other guys as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they kind of, hopefully they stick the landing. We've been in really good hands with this, with the filmmakers, and I look forward to seeing how they bring us home.
All right, that's a good note. We can leave it there. So we will be back for the final episodes of Jordan Ain't No Joke, covering The Last Dance. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Thank you.
We didn't even get to the double nickel game.
Yeah, sorry.